Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again from around the world despite the time difference for the second day of the 6th workshop on international labor migration statistics in the Asia Pacific region. My name is Tim Thompson and I will be today's moderator. Before we start today's sessions, I have some housekeeping announcements for those who didn't have the opportunity to get this information yesterday. First, I cordially ask you to change your username in Zoom using yesterday's format. You can edit your name by clicking the More button next to the Mute button located next to your name on the participants list. For country participants, please indicate the country name followed by NSO or LM depending on your organization and your first and last name. For ILO staff, please use ILO followed by your first and last name. Detailed instructions are displayed here on the screen. If you have any difficulty, please allow the Secretariat to help you change your usernames from our system. Next, I would like to ask you to keep your audio muted when you are not speaking, but keep your video on throughout this workshop. This should actually be your default setting when you enter the Zoom meeting room, so please keep this setting until you need to speak during the meeting. Finally, if you have any questions or need help regarding participation in this workshop, please send a message to the moderator via the chat window. Now, our first presenter for today is Ms. Rakatono Rivo, Microdata Analyst, Department of Statistics, ILO. Ms. Rakatono Rivo will provide information for Session 5, ILMS questionnaire and data collection strategy and process for about 50 minutes until 8:20 Geneva time. During this presentation, you can send your questions to me, the moderator, via the chat window, and I will invite 2 or 3 participants to take the floor in the order I receive their questions. Q&A will then last for about 10 minutes, and any remaining questions will be addressed in writing on our website a little bit later. With that, let me invite Ms. Rakatono Rivo to begin.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, dear colleagues. Thank you for joining us in this first session where I will present the International Labor Migration Questionnaire and the overall approach that is taken by the ILO for the labor migration data collection. So now I'd like to share my screen. So could you please let me know if you can see it? Okay, just a second. Just a second, trying to put the slideshow and share at the same time, which doesn't seem to work. Maybe I should probably just share first. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, so I had the pleasure to meet some of you last year in Seoul during the 5th workshop. And to those who attended that workshop last year, you've seen already some parts of this presentation, so it may be just a refresher for you. But since we have new colleagues joining us today for the first time, it is good, I think, to present the whole content and the details of the International Labor Migration Questionnaires. So my presentation will cover 5 parts. The first one, I will present the ILMS database, then the data collection strategy. Afterwards, I will present the content and the structure of the questionnaire and some tips to complete the questionnaire in an efficient way. And I will conclude with presenting you the new ILO data reporting system. So let's start first with the International Labor Migration Statistics, or ILMS database on ILOstat. First, why did this endeavor of International Labor Migration Database? And in fact, this has already been mentioned in detail yesterday by my colleague Natalia Popova during her presentation. But just as a summary, we can say that migration has been on the top of the global development agenda for several years now. We can even say for a decade. And we need good quality data for better informed policies. Also, the ILMS database is unique because there is no other database on international labor migration in the world. And beyond presenting the available data at the national level, the ILO also produces estimates of international migrant workers at the regional and global level. And these also require good national data as input. So for these reasons, developing and maintaining the ILMS database is essential. So the database is located on ILO-Stat, which is the data portal of the ILO Department of Statistics. And you can access the page through the link that is on the top of the slide. And there you can access the data catalog and filter the ILMS database just to access the 51 labor migration indicators that are currently disseminated. So in those indicators, we have 21 stock indicators collected through the ILMS questionnaire, including indicators such as the working age population, the employed migrants, so foreign-born or non-citizens. We also have 14 flow indicators collected through the questionnaire again, and we have some rates that are calculated afterwards once we process the data. And among those rates, we publish, for example, the share of foreign-born or the share of non-citizens, so the share of migrants, the labor force participation rate of migrants, and the employment to population ratio. So this is an overview of the current situation of the countries participating to this workshop in the ILMS database. And we can see that 20 out of 22 countries have data disseminated. Unfortunately, we don't have data on China and or on Turkmenistan. But for the rest of the countries, we have between at least 4 indicators for the country with the lowest number, up to 35 indicators for the country with the highest number, which is Armenia. And we can see here that we can get the data through 2 different channels for some country. So the first channel, the most important one, is the questionnaire, and the second one is the microdata. But I will elaborate on this microdata a little later in the presentation. So compared to last year's figures, there is a great improvement in the availability of data, but some gaps still persist, but this will be discussed in detail in the next session, in session 6 by my colleague Ji-Yoon Lee. Then let's talk about the overall approach that is taken by the ILO for this labor migration data collection. So first, in terms of coverage, since 2018, we proceeded to global data collection. This has also been the case in 1998, when the ILMS database was first created, but then it was discontinued in 2007. And in 2012, the data collection resumed, but through several regional initiatives that were not really coordinated. So there were different questionnaires used in different regions at different times. And at that time also, the data collected presented a certain number of issues, among which the insufficient coverage, some comparability issues, and so on and so forth. But since the global collection resumed, 2 years ago, the coverage of the database increased tremendously, going from around only 30 countries in 2015 to 129 countries in 2020. So this does not mean, of course, that we have full data on those 129 countries, but at least there is some information on labor migration on 129 countries in the database. In terms of timeline, before 2018, the data collection was ad hoc, except in Asian countries. In Asian countries, when they started the project again in 2012, they have implemented the data collection annually. And in 2018, it has been decided that the global data collection will also be annual. And we've had 2 successful rounds so far in 2018 and 2019. This year, the data collection was cancelled due to the COVID-19 crisis, which has heavily disrupted the work of the NSOs. So we didn't want to add an additional burden on them by requesting them to fill another questionnaire this year, but also because there is an ongoing reflection on some possible changes in the content of the questionnaire. So those changes may be decided after the upcoming meeting of the working group on labor migration, which will meet in November this year. But normally next year in 2021, the data collection will resume annually. In terms of technical process, since 2018, we've also started to integrate this questionnaire into the ILOstat collection system, which allows us to reduce the manual processing because the questionnaire we're using now can be directly uploaded into the ILOstat system, and there we can run automated consistency checks, which allows a better quality of the data that is published and also a better comparability across the different collections that are run by the ILO. Also, the approach now is to use various data channels and not rely solely on the ILMS questionnaire, which is still the most important way through which we collect data. But we also try to gather data through other means. So the microdata part, it's mainly household surveys data sets that are directly shared by the countries with the ILO, and the ILO will perform the calculations and derive the indicators. This is an interesting channel as we can really ensure the consistency in the processing and also in defining the variables that are used, the indicators that are used. And those micro datasets, in most cases, have been made available to the ILO in the first place for a different purpose, for the purpose of calculating the main indicators of the labor market, not in relation to labor migration, but in the team, we started to retrieve the migrant identification variables in those micro datasets, so namely the country of birth and the country of citizenship, and to include them in the processing codes to obtain the indicators when possible. So in this case of microdata, the only burden on countries would be to make the datasets available to the ILO. But the limit is that the household surveys cover only usually some stock indicators at the moment. And for obtaining flow indicators, completing the questionnaire is still required. Another way to gather the data are the other databases of tabulation that we can obtain directly from other organizations. And for the moment, it's only Eurostat that is sharing, that shares directly some tables, some indicators with us. But this is just an overview of the countries of the workshop group that have disseminated indicators based on microdata. So we can see that the 9 countries of the group have micro datasets that were made available to the ILO. And we can see that mainly it's often the labor force survey that has migration information included, although that we see that in Fiji, Papua New Guinea, and Tajikistan, we also have other type of surveys. It's interesting to see that in Armenia and Turkey, and to some extent Georgia as well, we have time series, so longer time series disseminated. For Turkey, we have 7 years of available data that we were able to get from the microdata, so that are now disseminated. And we can also see that it's interesting because in some cases, some survey include both criteria for migrant identification, and this allows us to really increase the number of stock indicators available. And to pursue the objective of improving the efficiency of the IMS process, we've also started last year to introduce the reduced length questionnaire for some selected countries. So in fact, this is a shorter version of the questionnaire where we only have 21 indicators included. Some stock tables are not included in this shorter version. And so far, this concern only the Eurostat and associated countries. So 34 countries in total, including Turkey. And the requirement for a country to be able to have a reduced length questionnaire is that they have a regular labor force survey or other household survey that are at least conducted annually, and that they make their micro datasets available to the ILO, or in the case of Eurostat, they can directly process and provide the tables, the indicators to the ILO. And it also requires that, of course, the micro datasets include the migrant identification variables. But we hope that in the near future, we would be able to increase the number of countries receiving this reduced length questionnaire, because it reduces the manual work for the countries, because there are less tables to fill in the questionnaire, and also on our end for the ILO. Then another key aspect of the strategy is that we would like to improve the collaboration with our partners on the field, because we cannot conduct this endeavor successfully by ourselves. So we partnered up with some organizations in different regions. So with Statistics Korea, the partnership started in 2015. With a memorandum of understanding signed that year. And 6 workshops have been conducted so far. So this is the 6th one. And this cooperation through those workshops and through increased communication with the focal points on the field have led us to have a relatively high response rate and a good coverage in terms of countries and in terms of indicators in the Asia and Pacific region. So this has been a successful partnership. We also work in collaboration with the ILO Bangkok office, because they help us to do additional follow-up with some ASEAN countries. They have a specific project in which they produce annually a report on the labor migration trends in those countries. So we are supporting each other in this endeavor. Last year, we've also started a collaboration with the African Union to fill the data gap in the African region. And hopefully next year, we would be able to use one single questionnaire in that region and to produce a joint report. And the last point is a partnership with the International Training Center of the ILO. And this has been already mentioned by Haki Ozel yesterday. So they're offering now an e-learning course on measuring and analyzing labor migration between the 26th October and the 4th December. Since this year it's going to be an online course, it's a good opportunity for those who could be interested in following that type of course. And I think the registration is still open. So now, let me talk about the content and structure of the ILMS questionnaire. So I will quickly come back on this concept of international migrant, although it has already been presented yesterday by Haki. So in the UN recommendation on statistics of international migration, the international migrants are the individuals who change their country of usual residence. The country of usual residence being defined as where the person lives, in which he or she has a place to live, where he or she normally spends the daily period of rest. In the guidelines concerning international labor migration statistics adopted by the International Conference of Labor Statisticians in 2018, some practical guidance were specified. So for the purpose of practical measurement, an international migrants are all persons who are usual residents of a country and who are citizens of another country. So that would be the foreign population, or whose place of birth is located in another country. So that would be the foreign-born population. So with those guidance from the guidelines, we have then now two criteria for defining international labor migrant. So we can use the criteria of the country of birth that will allow us to distinguish between the foreign-born and the native-born, and the criterion of country of citizenship, which would allow us to distinguish between the country, the non-citizens, and the citizens. So with those two criteria, we can say that the concepts are a little bit clearer than before, easier to measure because they are widely available. They are usually always included in most surveys. And they also allow for better comparability because before 2018, the countries used very different definitions of a migrant. Some country would consider as migrant only the work permit holder, or only the permanent residence holders, or only the registered aliens. So there was a very large variety of possible definition that the country were using. So now it's a little bit more comparable, but criteria, they somehow also have their limits because, for example, if we consider the country of citizenship, we know that not all non-citizens are alive. If we take the example of somebody that was born in Switzerland but from foreign parents, he would be born in the country and not moving anywhere, but he would be a non-citizen, so considered as a migrant. So those are still pending remaining questions. The citizenship can also change over time. So at some point in time, a person in a country can be a non-citizen and then become naturalized. So does he cease to be a migrant at that time? There is also the possibility of having multiple citizenship. There is the issue of stateless persons. So there are still some issues and some possible discrepancy even using those criteria, but let's say that we've moved forward because there is more common ground now using those criteria than before. And so in the questionnaire, there are 3 topics on which we collect information, and they are presented here along with the core indicators. So the first topic is the stock of international migrant. The second one, the inflow of international migrants. And the third one is the topic of nationals abroad. So the main indicators for the topic of stock are the working age population, the employment, the unemployment, and the mean earnings. And the indicators, of course, are disaggregated by sex and other relevant variables. So the country of birth or country of citizenship, the education, economic activity, occupation, skills level. It's the same for the inflow, where the main indicators are the inflow of international migrants and the inflow of employed international migrants. And for the topic of nationals abroad, this one mixes stocks and flows because it includes the stock of nationals living abroad, the inflows of return migrants, and the outflows of nationals either for employment or for other reasons. So those are the main topics, but the main indicators, but we also derive some other rates based on those collected indicators. And those rates include the share of migrants in the population. So the share of foreign-born or the share of non-citizens then, the labor force participation rate, the employment to population ratio, the unemployment rate, or in the case of nationals abroad, the share of return international migrant. So then in this slide, I wanted to come back on a question that was asked yesterday by our colleague from India when he mentioned multiple migrations. And I wanted to illustrate a little bit how it can be somehow captured in the database. I found the question very interesting because it illustrates the complexity of the migration movements and also the complexity of its measurement. So the example was someone that was born in a country A or citizen of country A, then moved to country B, and 2 years later moved again to country C. So as my colleagues mentioned yesterday, the database, of course, cannot identify individual trajectories, but that person will still be included in statistics. So let's say the country C is a country of measurements. So that person, that migrant, will be included, of course, in the stock of migrants of that country C. And let's say it's the foreign-born criteria that we're using. So we have the indicator, the stock of migrants by country of birth. So there, if the country A is among the top country of origin of migrants in this country, in country C, so the country A can be identified there. Also, during the year when the last migration happened, so the year when the person moved from B to C, normally that person will be included in the inflow of migrants of country C. So we have the indicator about the inflow of migrants by country of previous residence. And again, if country B is among the top country of residence of incoming migrants of country C, country B can be identified. If we take country A as the country of measurement, and if country A does collect data on their nationals abroad or on their registered nationals abroad, we know that that person, that migrant, will also be included in the stock of nationals living abroad of country A. And if country C is among the top countries where the nationals of country A live, country C can also be identified. So I think it was an interesting illustration of how those multiple or successive migration can be captured. So like I said, we don't have information on individual trajectories. We would need a standalone survey on migration for that, or even event history survey, but the migrant will for sure be included in counts. So here we can see the structure of the questionnaire. So the questionnaire comprises 3 Excel files built based on the migration definition criteria and the 3 topics that we just mentioned. So the first Excel file covers the topic of country of birth, and then uses the criterion of country of birth. And then we have 2 topics included. We have a separate sheet for each topic. So we have a tab for international migrant stock and another one for the international migrant inflow. It's the same for country of citizenship, the second Excel file. So it's exactly the same Excel file. It's just the migrant definition criteria that changes. And the third file is about the nationals abroad. So include those stock and inflow and outflow indicators on nationals abroad. So in total, we have 35 indicators collected through the questionnaire. And here, I would like to show you quickly what we call the life cycle of this Excel questionnaire. So how it's processed when we receive it from you. So when you complete those 3 Excel files and send them back to us, so we receive them and we proceed to what we call the registration. So in fact, we run them through a small program that runs a structural analysis. And these programs allow us to discard the questionnaire, the XQ, like we would call them, that we cannot process because either they are empty, there is no information in them, or they are duplicate because for some reason we've received the same file twice, or if there has been some structural changes made in the Excel file. For example, the user have added some columns or some cells because we're not supposed to alter the Excel files at all. So there we discard the XQ that we cannot process. And after we proceed to what we call the naked eye review. So we manually open the questionnaire and then review the content. So there we want to make sure that we have metadata everywhere we require metadata.
Otherwise, we cannot upload into the system. So this review is mainly on metadata and making sure that the data is in the right place, in the right column, and that it can be read by the system. And then we proceed to the upload into the ILOstat back office. And once the questionnaire, the Excel files are uploaded, the consistency checks are run in an automated way by the system. At this point, when there is no error, then the indicators go into the ILMS database. So they are published from that moment on. Or if there are some errors, then we will come back to you to ask some clarifications about the problems, the discrepancy. And at that point, if you respond to us, we can clarify the issue, we can correct the inconsistency, and then the indicator also gets into the database for publication. If we don't receive response for you, for example, or we're not together we're not able to resolve the issue and resolve the inconsistency, then we cannot publish, and the indicator will stay as pending. Or if for some reasons this inconsistency is justified, for example, there is a big change in levels of migration because of a change in the definition. So that would be explained by this change of concept, for example. So we would allow that kind of inconsistency, of course, with a note to the data explaining the difference or the change in the methodology. So this is the process that we use for questionnaire processing. And this leads me to the main technical features of the questionnaire that I think are important to mention again, because it's important to know that the workbook is protected and that we should not alter it in any way, not adding cells, not adding rows, but just enter information in the designated areas. Because if the underlying structure of the Excel file changes, it cannot be read by our system. So we'll have to enter the data manually again. That we'd like to avoid. And then the cells in the workbook are color coded. So here, for example, I put an example of table from the Excel file. So we can see 3 different colors there. So in dark yellow, the dark yellow cells are for drop-down menu. So you must select options there. So for example, the source field is a dark yellow menu. So there you can select the source, the data source of the table among the source you've previously listed in the source sheet normally. It's the same here for the list of country of birth. So it's a drop-down menu where you need to select options. The light yellow cells are for free text. So there you can enter the data, survey name, the notes. And please note that the data must be only entered in that yellow, light yellow cell. Otherwise, it cannot be read by the system. The other columns, the gray columns, are optional because they are only for revised data. Let's say you've submitted previously some data for us for a past year and you'd like to correct, revise that data, then you can introduce information in those gray columns. And like I said, an automated upload is done into the ILOstat back office system, and there we run some automated consistency checks. So the checks are made within the tables, so making sure that the values of the different categories add up to the total that's provided, for example, that the values for males plus the values of female add up to the grand total, for example. So this kind of checks. Also consistency checks across tables. So we see an example of inconsistency here. So that's the output of the back office after some checks. So we see, for example, that it compared the total value of employment from 5 different indicators, and there is an inconsistency for the second one because the total number of employed non-citizens is different in this table compared to the other tables. So it's this kind of small inconsistency that are underlined, pointed by the system. We also do consistencies with the previous year. So if you provided some data last year and provide some new data this year, we want to compare the values to make sure that there is no unexplained really sharp decrease or really sharp increase. So we're trying to follow the trends and if we are in doubt, we will contact you to try to confirm the values. We also do consistency across collections, meaning that we compare the value provided through this ILMS questionnaire with some comparable values from other ILO data collections. So here we see the second example of the back office output. And we see that there is a discrepancy between the total employment in the ILMS questionnaire and the total employment from the ILO annual data collection. So those two indicators, the indicator 11 comes from the ILO annual collection, and 1119 is the ILMS one, and you see that there is a small difference, but a difference that is recognized by the system. So we need to either allow this or find an explanation or correct. So this allows for better data consistency, better quality data that are published. And then I wanted also to quickly mention to conclude on the questionnaire that maybe it's possible that we have some changes in the 2021 version. So we may have additional indicators, and that will depend on the identified needs and the upcoming developments. So like I said, we will know more about this after the meeting of the working group on labor migration. There may be also some adjustments on the terminology we're using in the questionnaire. For example, currently for the inflow indicators, we talk about the citizens versus the non-citizens, but in the nationals abroad Excel file, we talk about the nationals. So there is a slight inconsistency that maybe can be corrected next year. So we would also like to hear from you. If you have, what are your views on the indicators that could be relevant to be included, or what are the indicators that you see completely irrelevant and should be removed? So if you have any suggestions or any insight on this, they are very much welcome. And so now let's talk about how we can complete this ILMS questionnaire in an efficient way. So there are some challenges in completing these Excel files. So those are the main identified ones, and they are exactly the same as last year. So the first problem is the non-response, of course. So we have 7 countries out of the 22 which did not submit a questionnaire with valid data in 2019. So either the country did not submit the questionnaire at all, or it was submitted empty or submitted with so many inconsistencies that were not resolved and that we couldn't publish anything from that questionnaire. A second problem is that the number of indicators is quite limited, and the data gaps are persistent. So in session 6, this will be discussed in more details, but we can say that even some basic stock indicators are still missing for many countries. We don't have information on the main country of birth. We usually don't have information on unemployment of migrants. We don't have information on mean earnings. And for the flows and for the nationals abroad, of course, we also have difficulties to gather data on those. The second group of issues are the inconsistencies that I just mentioned earlier. Inconsistencies within and across the tables, inconsistency with other ILO datasets. So they are still present. The good thing is that we can identify them, but it still takes time for us to come back to you and ask you to resolve them. So there is still this challenge of dealing with inconsistencies. And then the last point is the improper use of the Excel file by the respondent. And the main problem there usually is that there is often incomplete metadata information that is provided. So it's very important to complete this source sheet, which is the first tab, the second tab in the Excel file after the instruction tab. And it's important to complete in detail the fields, all the fields that are related to a source. So when you provide us with a source, for example, population census, then there is the series of information linked to that source that are required, because if we don't have that information, the upload into the system is not possible. And also one common problem that we encounter is that usually it's not the yellow column that's filled by respondent, but the gray column. But like I said, the system will only read that yellow column because the gray ones are just for revisions. Often it's the date that poses problem. I mean, the reference year on the top of the yellow column, because for example, if we collect data for this year, 2020, the reference year is going to be 2019. And this cell of the reference year can be changed, meaning that if your data does not relate to 2019, you can select a different year from that cell, but still introduce the data in the yellow column where it should be. So now, how do we address those challenges, those issues? So this is what I like to call the stairway to success. But in fact, it's for, I would say, tips to remember to make sure that we complete the questionnaire correctly in an efficient way. So the first important step is to ensure that all the available data is gathered and entered into the questionnaire. It's important to not leave any existing data unreported. And for that, it may be necessary to use a variety of sources, not only the labor force survey, not only the census, but also look into the administrative data. And for that, it may be necessary to coordinate with other national organizations as needed. The second tip for me is to carefully read the tips and the user guide. We always, when we launch the questionnaire and send you that email, we send you, we include a link to the user guide where we have details about the concept, about the definitions, about the required metadata for each table. And above each table, you will notice that we also often have short information to indicate you what we expect from that table, and so how to properly enter the information in that table. So it's important to read those information to help you. The second important step is to do consistency checks. So once you enter the data, please review them. So the consistency checks I already mentioned, the content of the table, so consistency checks within, across table, the sums, the level, etc. And then the fourth step, very important also, is to provide clarifications and corrections if it's needed. Because after the automated checks that we run, if we discover some inconsistency, we come back to you, and we still need your collaboration there for you to help us resolve those inconsistencies to allow for publication of the data. So I would like to put an emphasis on this point, which I think is really essential. It's the coordination with other national organizations. So this has been already mentioned by my colleagues yesterday, the different sources from which we can obtain the different type of statistics, stock, flow, and other type of sources. So everything is listed here, but this has been already mentioned yesterday. But the important point here is that those complementary data sources are needed, and you as officers from the NSOs and from the Ministry of Labor, we are our first contact points, like Haki said yesterday, our ambassadors. And we would need you to please coordinate with the other agencies that are not part of these workshops, that are not part of this network yet, but those agencies can have access to those complementary data sources. For example, in terms of administrative data, the immigration services or the services that deal with work permits, visa, the border registrations would be important to get in touch with. The social security institutions, the services taking care of the foreign affairs, the citizens abroad. So it's really important to build that network of agencies and organizations to try to fill the data gap. And so now to conclude, I will just quickly present you what we call ILO-Stat Stars. So it's the new ILO statistics reporting system. So this has been developed to try to improve the process, the submission process and the processing. So now, how does it work? So we send you, when we launch the questionnaire, we send you an email with a country-specific HTML page. And through that link, there is an example of link on the top of this slide. There you can download the questionnaire and you can see some information on the contacts to which the questionnaire was sent this year. You can see also some information on the available data, so the data that has been previously submitted. And then once you download the questionnaire, you complete, you send them back to us by email. So that's the current process. So now what we would like to do is to use this ILO-Stat Stars. So it's a new platform for data reporting. So it's another step towards the automation of the processes. So how does it work? So it's the access to this platform is account-based, meaning that you would have to open an account to that platform and you would specify yourself your contact details. You can update them whenever it's needed. And this ILO-Stat Stars, this platform, is a single access point for the questionnaire download, but also for the questionnaire submission. So you can go there, retrieve the Excel files that you need to complete, and then through the same platform, send them back to us. It's also a single access point to you to access relevant metadata, because from there you can access the user guide of the questionnaire, the glossary with definition of some important terms, access to the document of the different statistical standards, to the different manuals and guides. So everything is centralized in the same place. And it contributes to the automating the processes, because with using ILO-Stat Stars, in fact, you already upload the questionnaire into the system. So the manual intervention is really only at the very end of the process. So I showed you the life cycle earlier. So the intervention would be just after the consistency checks, when the data is submitted through ILO-Stat Stars. Another important interest of ILO-Stat Stars is that it should improve the coordination among the different organizations within the same.
I believe her feed has gone down.
Did you? Yeah, sorry. I don't know where did this just stop. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Maybe about 15 or 20 seconds.
Okay. Okay. So that's not too bad then. I can start again. Okay. So this is the last screen. This is the last slide anyway. This is the last slide anyway. But what I wanted to mention, so here we can see an example of how the ILO-Stat Stars page looks like. So I wanted to say that here you can see the contacts, the questionnaire contacts, so the contacts of your country to which the questionnaire was sent. You can also see the agency contact, meaning your own organizations, the people from your own organizations to which the questionnaire was sent. you have you can see on the left the data availability. So you can, if you click on questionnaire indicators, you can see which data is available for this questionnaire, for this collection in your country. You can also access the ILOstat database, and then the metadata that I mentioned are just below the help. So you can see the information there, the different document. But I think the real interest of this ILOstat stars is that improves coordination, because you can see there also which files have been submitted already to the ILO. If you click on recorded files, just next to you have the download tab. So from there you can download the questionnaire, transmit files. From there you can send us the file back. And under recorded files, you can see the history of the files that have been submitted to the ILO. So the files won't be editable, but you will be able to open them and see what has been received by the ILO. So you can follow up on which data has been provided by your colleague or by other organizations to the ILO. So it's really like a central point for the focal points of your country to access the contribution in terms of data that has been made to the ILO. So hopefully this will help this coordination among the different agencies. And it has been tested for real this year for the ILO annual data collection on labor market indicators. So we see the first statistics that it has now more than 300 users registered with accounts since May 2020. More than 170 countries using the platform, and the platform has been accessed more than 1,000 times. So around half of the country submitted their completed questionnaire through the platform so far. 58 still submitted via email, and around half of the received Excel files were also submitted through STARS, versus around 136 via email. So if this annual ILO data collection on labor market indicators using ILOstat stars is successful, so next year it's possible that we would also use this platform for reporting the data. So that's what I needed to share with you today. Thank you for your attention. Sorry for the little hiccup with my my signal. And welcome to any questions, of course. So, Mr. Moderator, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rakatano Riva, for your presentation. I see 3 questions in the chat window, and the first question would be from Mr. Roth from India, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Actually, I'm sorry I joined a bit late, 10-15 minutes late, but I was stuck up in somewhere in the traffic. But I am afraid if I have lost any of the vitally important information. But my concern is about the data collected through this worksheet, whether it corresponds to the individual level information on migration that is collected through census, or it is about the aggregated data tables we are talking about, which will be shared with the world fraternity. That's what my precise question is. Thank you.
Okay. So shall I respond immediately, or?
Yes, please.
Are we going to take a round of questions? Yeah, okay. So I didn't really clearly hear your question, but if I, from what I understand, you're asking whether we'll be collecting individual information or aggregated tables through the new platform. Is that your question?
Yeah, exactly. That is the question.
Okay, so no, in fact, it's still going to be the aggregated tables that we collect through the ILMS questionnaire. And actually, we're still going to send the ILMS questionnaire. We're still going to send the Excel files to be completed. It's just the submission process that changes. So instead of sending us back an email with the free Excel files with aggregated tables in attachment, it would be to directly upload those tables through that those Excel files, the same Excel files exactly, through this platform. The interest for us is that it gets immediately into our system, and the processing can, the automated processing can start directly there without our manual intervention to do the registration, to review with naked eyes. So this is the only thing that changes. Other than that, it's exactly going to be the same Excel files.
Okay.
Good, then let's move on to the second question. The second question is from Mr. Kalantarian from Armenia. If you would like to go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Oh, he doesn't have a microphone. The question written on the chat was, who was giving permission to the system and how many people can have access from each country?
Okay, thank you. So, in fact, since you are already focal points included in our contact database, you will already have with your email address, current email address, access to that system when we will launch it. So you will just have to add a password, I think, and maybe specify some additional information on your details. But for the new users, so for users that are not registered yet in our contact database, so people who are not yet our focal points, it's our sysadmin that will proceed to the registration and will allow access to that system. And of course, there will be some questions on from which organization is that person, does the email correspond to an email to an official organization? But there is this permission that will be given by the sysadmin for the new users. And I don't think there is a limit of people that can access for each country. I think everyone from a given organization can open. So we've seen that we have so far 300 users, 300 accounts for 179 countries. So there is not more than 2 people from each country that registered so far. But the interesting thing is that there is a lot of access. So it seems that the users are interested by the additional information that is provided on the platform as well.
Okay, good. And the third question, we have about 2 or 3 minutes. The third question is from Ms. Singh from India.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to know who is the main point of contact in every country for these questionnaires. Is it the NSO offices or the Ministry of Labour?
Yes, thank you. So, in fact, so far, we're contacting the NSOs and the Ministry of Labor, because let's say that those have been the main partner of the ILO Department Statistics in data collection so far. But we realized that for migration statistics, maybe the NSOs and the Ministry of Labor don't have the complete information that we required, but we contact them in the first place because we do have already those focal points. We have contact details of people in those organizations, but like I mentioned, we would need also to expand our network of focal points to people in other type of agencies. And I think mainly it should be the ministry that deals with immigration affairs. So that could be the Interior Affairs, for example, with all those services dealing with work permits, visas, with the border registrations. But in fact, so far, we haven't been able to really reach out to those people. So that's why it's important that us here as a network try to expand and reach out, coordinate with those other agencies that can have much more data on this topic than we do. Thank you.
Okay, I hope that answered the question. Thank you very much for the talk and everyone for the questions.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll move on to session 6, where we will discuss outcomes and results of the 2019 ILMS data collection. Ms. Jian Lee, Senior Expert, Department of Statistics at the ILO, will now give a presentation on this topic for the next 50 minutes until 9:20 Geneva time, followed by a Q&A session. Please, during her presentation, make sure you can keep your microphones muted and feel free to send your questions to me via the chat window, and then you'll be invited to take the floor. With that, let me invite Ms. Lee to take the floor. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, team. Can you hear me?
It's a little low. If you could a little bit turn up the volume.
Okay. Can you
Better,
hear me?
thank you. Better, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, team. And good morning and good afternoon. My name is Jian Lee. It is my great pleasure to have this opportunity to speak with you today. This is my second time to participate in this workshop. So 1 year ago, I was attended as a co-staff member in Seoul, Korea. But a year after, I am participating in this meeting as a speaker of the ILO side in Geneva, Switzerland. I believe I am a real example of the international migration worker according to the ILMS concept and definition. In personal, this presentation seems to me a story about how to count me as an international migration worker, in which data source should be recorded, and what kind of information should be needed to identify and characterize me as an international migration worker. I would like to say thank you to you for allowing me to share the outcome and result of the 2019 ILMS data collection in this workshop. And then I have some slides I'd like to share with you now. So can you share my screen?
It looks like it's up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there we are. These are the content of the topic I will cover today. Okay, wait a minute. Yes, these are the contents of the topic I will cover today. My presentation will basically involve 3 parts. First, let me briefly introduce what are the indicators of the migration stock, migration flow, and national overall in 2019 ILMS questionnaire. Next, result of the 2019 ILMS data collection will be explained. Response rate, distribution of the ILMS indicators by type of the data source, reported to all over the world and the workshop participating countries. Finally, I want to address some brief results of the analyzing ILMS database for workshop country in terms of the migration stock of the working age population and employed person, inflow of the working age population, and national overall. So let's move to the indicators of the ILMS questionnaire. To begin with, let me try to outline basic concept and definition and criteria. According to the ILO guideline concerning statistics of the international labor migration in 2018, international migrants include all those residents of the given country who ever changed their country of usual residence. ILMS used the 2 criteria to identify the international migrants from the non-migrants. One is the country of birth, another one is the country of the citizenship. Many international migration data based on the country of birth, but where no information over the country of birth is available, data on the country of citizenship is totally fine for the ILMS. ILMS questionnaire split into 3 topics: migration stock, flow, and national abroad. Previously mentioned, the ILO guidelines said that the stock of the international migration to worker is the number of the international migrants in a given time. The target population of the migrant stock questionnaires are 3 groups. First, working age population, and employed and unemployed person. To identify the migrants from the non-migrants, target population should be disaggregated by country of birth or country of citizenship. That's the most important thing to complete the ILMS questionnaire. For working age population, three variables should be collected for characterizing the international migrant. Okay, international migrant. It includes the sex, age, and education. For employed person, additional information needed on work characteristics, economic activity, occupation, and monthly earnings. In 2019 IRMS questionnaire, total number of indicators of the migrant stock is 20, but actually it can be reduced to 10 because it asks the same question twice but different basis: country of birth, country of citizenship. This is the migration flow. According to the ILSO guideline, labor migration flow refers to the number of international migrant workers who enter the country or who left the country of measurement during the specific reference time. In migration flow topic, target population is the working age foreign-born or non-citizen population. Main questions are inflow of the working age foreign-born by sex and education, and inflow of the employed person by economic activity. Total number of questions in migration flow is the flow is 8, but actually asked 4 questions. In national abroad table, the target populations are national currently reside in the abroad and return migrant from abroad. This part includes a question about stock, inflow, and outflow of the nationals by sex. This question consists of 7 questions. In sum, total 35 indicators are collected through the IRMS questionnaire. Now, I will turn to the brief result of the IRMS data collection. In 2019, the ILO sent the IRMS questionnaire to 196 countries. Among them, 112 countries were responded. Overall response rate is the 57% of the total countries. Europe and Central Asia show the highest response rate at 69%. This rate was followed by the Asia Pacific region, 64%. Overall response rate of the Asia region is high, especially all Southeast Asian countries have submitted the IRMS questionnaire to ILO. Also, Arab state country recorded the lowest response rate, 42%, and 52% of African countries have responded to IRMS. Now, I would like to look at the indicators that have been collected in IRMS database. Over the several years for all around the world, your country submitted this data set to us. This figure shows the overall situation of the IRMS indicators according to the data availability. Because of the time limit, 15 indicators were selected for this analysis. I would like to highlight 3 things in this graph. First of all, countries are able to provide more migration stock data rather than the migration flow indicators. Among 109 countries, 108 countries can provide data for the working age population by sex, age, and place of birth indicators. It is the highest indicator supplied by the countries. On the other hand, inflow of foreign-born or non-citizen indicators were available only in 40 countries. The least available indicators are inflow of the employed person's data. Second of all, migration flow data was slightly more supplied than data for the national abroad when we request the same level of the variable to country. Finally, the indicators based on the country of birth was slightly more than country of citizenship data in IRMS database. In general, data on international migrant stock are more likely to be based on the country of birth rather than country of citizenship. But data on migration flow is more likely to be based on the country of citizenship. Yeah, this figure presents the information already shown in the previous graph, but from a different angle by type of data source. On this graph, we can see the several things. First, data sources used by country are quite diverse. Household survey, including labor force survey, and the household income and expenditure survey, and population census, administrative data, and official estimate are used to complete the IRMS questionnaire. Second, according to the migration topic, used major type of data sources are very different. Stock data on migrants are mainly derived from the household survey. The most widely used stock data source is the labor force survey. Its share of the total data source varied from 35% to up to 78%, and then followed by household income and expenditure survey, and finally population census. While administrative data is the main source of the migration flow and national abroad indicators, its share of the total varied from 70% of the total indicator to 30% depending on the indicators. Next, indicators derived from these sources are different from the country to country. Let's look at the non-citizen working age population by sex indicator. 20 countries used the RFS, 14 countries used the census, and 11 countries used the administrative data source. In sum, the raw response level for the flow data indicated that the collection of the flow data is more difficult than stock data. This is because there is no single source of data can provide all the information required in the migration flow table. I will skip this page to turn to the analysis of the workshop participation country. In 2018 IRMS data collection, 17 countries are able to provide the migration data, while in 2019, 19 out of the 22 workshop countries are able to provide the IRMS data. Response rate was the 86%. It increased from the 64% in 2008 to 86% in 2019. Also, the number of indicators are increased from the 160 to 240. Since 2019, IRMS response rate for the global level is 57%. So workshop countries showed a higher response rate because they are 86% than any other region in the world. I think this is the real output and progress we have made over the past years through this workshop. This graph shows the availability of the IRMS indicators for the 22 workshop participating countries. As you can see here, compared to the average of the all country, workshop country provide more migration flow data, national abroad data than migration stock indicator. This figure shows the distribution of the IRMS indicators according to type of data source per workshop country. Workshop countries provide more indicators from the more diverse source compared to the all countries. Of the 22 participating countries, 14 countries were able to provide indicators for outflow of nationals by sex and country of destination. It is the highest indicator supplied by the country, and then followed by the inflow of the working age non-citizens by sex from the certain country. Also employed non-citizen by sex and country of citizenship data produced by the certain country. Administrative data source play a major role in the migration data source for workshop country compared to the all country. It seems to me this is the main reason that workshop countries show the high response rate than any other region, because workshop country supply the more administrative data to us. It increased the response rate. And then it is the concrete output that we have made a difference through this workshop. Next table presents the data source for the IRMS indicators supplied by the workshop participating countries. As you can see in this table, strategy for completing IRMS questionnaire differ from country to country. A majority of countries use the multiple data source to produce the IRMS indicator. Georgia and Mongolia use the population census, administrative data, and labor force survey to supply the IRMS data. Fiji use the multiple data source also, but the major one is the administrative data, and then LFS, and followed by official estimate. Korea provided the census source for the stock data and administration data record for the flow data. For the Armenia and Samoa as being the country that used the single source only. All IRMS indicators of the Armenia came from LFS, whereas administrative data is the only source of the IRMS data for Samoa. India also provides the flow data only, and Pakistan provides the stock data only. A table in page 17 and through the next page is present the detailed administrative source for each IRMS indicators supplied by the participating countries. Administrative data is the main source for migration flow and national abroad indicators. Annual report of the immigration or arrivals and departure card was the most frequently used to tabulate the migration flow data. Record from the Ministry of Labor or Ministry of External or Ministry of Internal are major source for stock for national abroad in many countries. I hope this table gives some hint to the country that are looking for more administrative source to complete the IRMS data. Do you remember in page 14 slide, IRMS response rate for the workshop country? In 2019 IRMS, workshop country provided 214 indicators to IRMS database, but the number of published indicators to IRMS database is slightly smaller than country responded. This is the main reason for the data not being released. I think you know the reason already because the previous Nirina's presentation is talking about this issue already. So I'm going to skip this page. Yeah. Now I would like to move on to the outline result of the analyzing IRMS database for workshop country. But before I do, let me very briefly introduce a global estimate on the international migrant workers as a global benchmark for of the country analysis. ILO produced the first edition in 2015 and recently updated the 2017 estimate. You already showed what is the global estimate in the previous session. In this estimate, migrants defined as a foreign-born person rather than non-citizen. It is estimated internationally there are 258 million migrants, among them 234 million working-age migrants and 164 million migrant workers. Among all migrant workers, male migrant workers made up 95 million or 58% of the total, but the female migrants consist of 41% of the total workers. Global estimated international migrant workers provide 11 regional estimate of the migrant workers. According to this estimate, in 2017, the proportion of migrants as a working age population 4.2 in globally. The highest share of the migrant in region working age population is the Arab state with 27%, followed by North America and Western Europe. Among Asia and Pacific region, Central Western Asia is the highest with the 8.6%, whereas the Eastern Asia is the lowest share of the migrant in the region working age population with the 0.6%. But please remember this number is the portion figure. In terms of the number of migrants, nearly 50% of the international migrants are located in Asia. About 27% of all migrants in the world located in the Eastern Asia, and 20% is in the Southern Asia. And the two most populous countries are India, China, and India. Let's look at the workshop country situation more closely through the latest available IMS data in each country. This graph shows the number of foreign-born working age population and their share of the total working age population by countries. 10 countries reported the number of foreign-born working age population, and Turkey showed the highest number of the foreign-born migrants, 1.6 million, followed by Nepal, Bangladesh, and Armenia. In terms of the share of the migrants as a country's working age population, Bhutan is the highest rate with the 11%, followed by Armenia, 5%, and Nepal is 4%. In other words, more than 1 out of the working age population in Bhutan were foreign-born in 2017. This slide shows the number of non-citizen working age population and then their share of the total working age population by country. Figures for non-citizen working age population came from 10 countries. The number of non-citizen aged 15 plus was the highest in Korea, 1.5 million. The share of the non-citizen working age population varied from the 12% for the Georgia, less than 1% for the 4 countries. This figure shows the difference between age distribution of the working age citizen and non-citizen. The proportion of the young adult in non-citizen was substantially higher compared to that in citizen. In Mongolia, the proportion of the prime age adult migrants that aged 25 to 54 was 76%. It should be compared to the 59% of citizens belong to prime age adult. This one shows the number of employed non-citizens. 13 countries reported in IMS. In 2018, Korea has nearly 900,000 employed migrants, and both Iran and Bangladesh have more than 500,000 employed non-citizens. This slide shows the gender composition of the employed non-citizens. Globally, on average, global average is 42% of all migrant workers were female in 2017. For workshop countries, the proportion of the male migrant workers is much higher than the female migrant, that with the country variation. The share of the employed female non-citizen varied from Bhutan is 97% to Armenia is 60%, but still have to show the high share of the male migrant workers. IMS questionnaire asked the number of working age population, employed and unemployed. These are called primary statistics. By using 2 more primary indicators, IMS database can provide the secondary statistics, such as the employment to population ratio and labor force participation rate. This graph shows the employment to population ratio by place of birth. Employment to population ratio among migrants varied by country. In Bangladesh and Fiji, the employment to population ratio among the foreign-born was higher than that among the native-born. In Turkey and Armenia, the ratio among the foreign-born was lower than native-born. This is the labor force participation rate by country. Globally, labor force participation rate of the migrants was higher than those of non-migrants, but there was significant regional variation. 4 workshop countries reported this figure, and LFPR for the migrants was lower than those of the non-migrants. Inflow of the working age non-citizen. 13 out of the 22 workshop countries reported the annual inflow of the working age non-citizen. In 2018, the number of working-age international migrants arrived to Korea was 474,000. This graph shows about the inflow, and next graph shows the stock of the nationals abroad. The stock of national abroad has a huge variation across the country. The highest number recorded in India, more than 30 million, and Pakistan is 9 million, Nepal is 1.9 million, was a national abroad. This slide shows the inflow and outflow of the nationals. 14 out of the 22 workshop countries supply the outflow of the national country of destination on their country of destination. On the other hand, 6 countries report the inflow of the nationals returned from the abroad by country of previous residence. Sri Lanka and Mongolia show the highest number of outflow of the nationals. One can find the figure from the country that report the both in outflow of national data and the both in inflow and outflow of the national data. Level of the in and outflow of the national was quite similar each other. Yeah, I'm going to summarize my presentation so far. IRMS provide rich information about the international migration workers from 129 countries around the world. The purpose of IRMS questionnaire is to measure how many migrant workers are, where they came from, and who they are. There are 2 basic criteria for distinguishing migrants from the non-migrants: country of the citizenship and country of birth. Either one of the criteria should be included in your country's migration data to complete the IRMS questionnaire. The target population of IRMS is native born and foreign born, one citizen or non-citizen, working age person who are usually residing in a given country, and nationals who are living abroad. The results from the analyzing distribution of the recent IRMS data indicated that indicators by the country and type of data source show that countries were able to more provide migration stock indicators rather than migration flow data. Migration flow data was slightly more supplied than data for the national abroad. Indicators based on the country of birth or slightly more than country of citizenship data. Migration data came from a variety source: household survey, including labor force survey, and household income and expenditure survey, population census, administrative data, and official estimate. The main data source of the migrant stock was the labor force survey. Its share of the total data source varied from 35% to up to 78%. While the major data source of the migration flow was the administrative data, its share of the total varied from 70% to 70%. The results from the analyzing IRMS of indicators showed that Asia country showed the result from the analyzing the IRMS indicators revealed that is a 2019 IRMS data collection. Workshop country showed a higher response rate than any other region. Workshop country provide more indicators from the more diverse source compared to the average of all countries and supplied more migration flow data than migration stock data. Stage for the completing IRMS questionnaire differed from country to country, using only one source, mixing available different sources, and using estimate rather than observational data. The results from briefly analyzing IRMS databases for workshop countries show that many characteristics of the migrants were in common, more likely to be young, and they are male. But migration process and its consequence in the labor market differed by countries. Okay, in migrant count, Thomas and his colleagues suggest 5 practical steps toward the better migration data. I'd like to finish my presentation with this quote about the first step for migrant count. Ask 3 basic questions on every population census about country of citizenship, country of birth, and country of previous residence. Then publish cross-tabulation of this information by age and sex. I think this does not apply for the population census only. This applies for any other surveys and administrative record as a migration data source. Please count to international migrant workers just like me. And thank you for your listening.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lee. If you have any other questions, please go ahead and send them to the chat window. I see one from Ms. Tungi from Fiji, if you'd like to go ahead and ask that question. Can't hear, but I'll just go ahead and read it for you. It just said, when will the ILO send us the 2020 questionnaires?
2020 questionnaire is not sent yet because we are not going to send it this year because of the COVID-19 situation. We wanted to make a burden to respond to this questionnaire to you, but actually we collect the data through the micro data over the AFS, and then okay, and then also we downloaded the bulk data set from the in your country database, so we can make the indicators is available to the collect through the online, but we are not sending the real questionnaire to your country in this year. But next year we are collected the this year data also, because we are going to send the 2021 questionnaire for the next year. And then during that time, we are going to ask the 3 years data for you.
Okay, Ms. Tungi, give me a
May I
thumbs
add
up.
something, Ji-yoon?
Yep.
Yes, yes, sure.
Thank you. Noted.
You should clarify to add some comment in this matter. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. So I'd like just to add something to clarify. So like I mentioned in the presentation, there won't be a 2020 data collection, so we won't be sending the questionnaire this year. We just did it for ASEAN countries, so maybe there is a little confusion there. I meant to the countries belonging to the Association of Southeast Asia Nations. So for this group of 10 countries, we send the questionnaire this year. It's already out and we're waiting for their feedback. But for the rest of the country, we postpone the collection, the data collection for next year. Sorry if there was a confusion about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. There's also a question from Mr. Roth from India.
Yeah, my question is regarding the gender dimension, like whether we have analyzed the data from the gender perspective as well. What are the implications on the families moving along with the working people, migrating people? Has the data been analyzed from that angle? That's my precise question. Thank you.
Actually, I'm a real international migrant workers. This is the first year. I only know through the global estimate of the international migrant workers. And then if you saw the estimate, there has some analysis for the gender and age dimension, also income level, country difference, as how to make this kind of things made differently. And then, but you asking me too about the family related migration. This one is not covered by yet, I believe so, because we didn't collect the data as the how many persons are moved by the reason of the move is related to family. We are not concerned yet, but I'm not sure. Maybe this one will be the Haki. I would like to invite you to clarify this matter, because we needed to share your experience about this matter. Haki?
Well, thank you, Jiwan, and thank you for the question. I think we have, I agree with Jiwan's remarks. We have data on, in terms of gender analysis, which was made in the global estimates. This can be used. In terms of further analysis of the ILMS data, of course, further analysis could have been done, can be done. But first of all, from our point of view, we first put effort to strengthen the database and really improve the communication with the countries. One of the problems that we are facing in the collecting data in having a good communication with the focal points to strengthen the database. As you have seen, the data has already been analyzed, partially by Jiwan's presentation, and we have some other studies as well done by Nirina. But of course, further studies can be done and should be done as well. In terms of family related, as Jiwan mentioned, this is out of scope of our ILMS database. Nirina, would you like to add anything?
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the question. So this gender dimension is very important. And of course, it's possible to do some analysis taking account this gender dimension using the data that is currently available in the ILMS database. We didn't present it really here today because we had to choose what to present in a limited time. But the information is available. And also, I'd like to invite you to look at the ILOStat web page, where we have a tab that is about blogs. So we have a page that's called ILOStat blogs, where we present some analysis that we do with the ILOStat data. And there is there is a paper there on migration. So it's not specifically on gender, but I wanted to mention the ILOStat blog because there is a paper on women migrants that is being prepared and that hopefully should be published soon on that blog. In fact, it was prepared for March this year to be published around the 8th of March. But with the COVID situation, everything was on hold. But that paper is there, being prepared, and will be published at some point later on. But I invite you to follow this ILOStat blog page, because that's where we present all our analysis. So I'm going to retrieve the link and share the link in the chat box for you to access. But just to confirm that, yes, this gender dimension analysis is still totally possible, but hasn't been presented yet so far. And normally there is that blog that is coming soon, hopefully, and we can have some insight there. Thank you. So I'm sharing the link now.
Mr. Roth, did that address your follow-up as well?
Actually, I saw a diagram where we saw the total number of migrants. Then out of that, what is the proportion of 15 plus? And after that, within that 15 plus migrants, how many of them are workers? So my precise question was about the non-migrating, non-working migrants and gender dimension of that non-working migrants.
Yeah, I think you are right, because I saw some graph about the LFS labor force participation rate for the whole country. Usually, labor force participation rate for the migrant is much higher than the native non-migrant. But when I showed the slide, it is a diverse shape is shown, because this one is related to the gender gap, because usually the high income level country is show the very higher women's labor force participation rate. It caused the increase the migrant is also. So this kind of thing is happening, and they also, you can show that this one in the global estimate in the international migrant workers. maybe you can show the gender dimension also according to the difference in the income level country, as there is a difference in the between the labor force participation rate and the labor market situation is very different in the country to country. Maybe it will be the first to look at it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we also have a question from Mr. Yuk from Statistics Korea.
Hello, my name is Dong-hyung Yuk from Statistics Korea. First of all, thank you for your interesting presentation, and I think the response rate is one of a big challenge in collecting ILMS. But in the presentation, response rate in the workshop countries shown really higher rate, and I'm wondering about the main reason of this higher response rate in workshop countries. Thank you.
Yeah, as far as I know, this one is when you look at the slide about the metadata source for the IRMS data, and the workshop country show the higher portion of the administrative data can be used. This one make a difference. I believe so, because in most of the country, RFS data is the major source of data. RFS is a perfect source to look at the migration data, but it is so very expensive. But the administrative data sources, every country has the administrative data source, but didn't report it. But during this workshop, we learned about why this kind of administrative data is so important, and what kind of data source can be used to complete the IRMS data questionnaire. And then we get reported many diverse source, especially administration data, and then more flow data and more national overall data. That caused the higher response rate of the workshop country to compare to the around the world in average. I think so, but Nirina, you want to add some additional comment about this?
No, I think you've clarified everything, so it's good.
Okay, if Mr. Yuk is happy, we have one more question from Ms. Jung from Statistics Korea.
My name is Young-Shim Jung from Statistics Korea. Actually, the result of the 2019 ILMS data analysis were very interesting. Among them, it seems that in the case of Turkey, the workable population of non-citizens was more than 60%. Is there any special reason?
You mean employment to population ratio or labor force one?
Yeah.
Employment to population ratio? Yeah, I think I'm not an expert to the labor economics, but when I saw from the global estimate, there's a middle income country show the lower labor force participation rate compared to any other region. And then this is caused by because the low income country usually show the lower labor force participation, higher labor force participation rate because of the child labor kind of thing. And then the middle income country, your labor force participation is a little bit small, goes down. And then in the high income country, is a level of participation rate is going up. This kind of thing happening, and also I think the Turkey showed the typical type of the middle income country labor force participation rate between the migrant and non-migrant. Usually, in this case, related to the gender gap in the labor force participation rate, because it's very different between the gender the labor force participation particularly for the men and women is very different in this country because the little bit lower the non-migrant labor force participation. 네. That's what I know, but I'm not sure. Well, do you have any expert to explain this situation more close? Maybe the Haki will be Haki is maybe he has some experience to share with us.
I think, I'm sorry, I missed the question, but I suggest to put the slides on to share with the Turkish colleagues from Turkey and get their remarks on this, please.
Okay. I think this one. Oops.
Which page이냐고 하기 씨한테.
Can you tell us the slide number, maybe?
Number is maybe the 28 or 29. Slide number 28 or 29.
I'm not sure if you need to share again or if we can do that from the system over here.
Yeah, I can do that.
Great.
Previous 28, 29.
Okay. Can you show it?
Previous.
I can see that, yes.
Okay.
So, Mr. Özel, did you want a participant from Turkey to address this or someone else?
Yeah, I think, if the colleagues from Turkey may have any remarks on this. Otherwise, of course.
Yeah, I can try to explain about this. If you can hear my voice.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. When we talk about labor participation rates about Turkish citizens and foreign-born people, there's a difference about another countries because our migrants people, mostly women and children, and they are not participate in labor force because of the education and working on household works.
Okay.
And thank you very much, Tuna. In fact, actually, this is, normal. Generally, as we know, the migrants, non-natives have to work harder and to keep their life, to be able to survive. So I think this is normal. If I understand the question correctly, why, the non-native, the ratio of non-native is higher than,
lower than.
Lower than the foreign-born person. One reason perhaps Tuna can clarify this, this could be the source of data as well, the coverage of the survey, because the labor force survey is the source of data. This could be the reason of the sampling. They have not adequately covered in the LFS.
Yes, and also this is a reason because in our LFS we cannot cover all the migrants who are not registered our database, address-based database. So we cannot catch all of these persons also.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, if that addresses that, I did see one more question from Ms. Singh from India in the chat room.
Yes, thank you. As I understand from the questionnaire that you also capture data on migration by type of economic activity. So any particular classification that is used for the economic activity to maintain uniformity?
I think Nirina may answer to this.
Yes. So in fact, we're using mainly the international standard industrial classification of economic activity, revision 4, so what we call ISIC revision 4. But we can also, we also have a correspondence table. So using the previous revisions of this ISIC classification. So in the user guide, we're sharing correspondence table where you can retrieve if in your country you're using a different classification or a different version of the ISIC, you can find the correspondence into that revision 4 of the classification. And of course, we're using aggregated economic activities. So it's easier to find the correspondence between the previous version and this one that we use in the questionnaire. But you can select which version you want to use. And like I said, find the correspondence in the user guide. I hope it answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take one quick last one. I see Dr. Singh from India there has asked us another question about gender discrimination.
Hi, good morning. Actually, I wanted to ask, are you studying any gender dimension in specific economic activities in the questionnaire also?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't study this one is further because this is the first year I'm working in the IDO, and then I just look at the IDMS data only. So I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Yeah. But if I may add something, like we said, we have the information to do that sort of analysis in the database, and it's something that we would like to do to run this analysis, taking account the gender dimension, and we would like is to publish it as a blog on the ILOstat blog page soon. But there is a line because there are different papers that needs to be published before us, but it's among our projects, so it's in our plans. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Ms. Lee, for the presentation and everyone for the active discussion. This will conclude our sessions for today. I do remember from my time in the classroom, we do prefer to finish a few minutes early than a few minutes late. Am I right? I think so. So today we had 25 participants from 15 countries joining us despite the challenging time schedule. We certainly appreciate that, and I hope for the same enthusiastic participation from you tomorrow. For tomorrow's meeting, we have sessions about developing and using administrative data sources for labor migration statistics and administrative data sources on international labor migration, as well as case studies from 3 countries. So the meeting will resume at the same time using the same Zoom link as today. Please do your best to be punctual. You were fantastic today. Thank you very much for joining us. Everyone give me a little see you later, and we look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.